We launched creator monetization 1.5 months ago. Let's check some of the best games you've made. You've created astonishing 20,500 games, and by you, we mean 3,765 creators worldwide. Also, your games are better than ever. Our data team shared that average playtime has already increased over 20% and retention almost 50%. Rock Tycoon Idol had the longest #1 streak on top charts. Easy Obby got the most likes, 12,311. And you earned already $30,000 via engagement-based payouts. And now you have the chance to earn more in the $100,000 competition that will run until September 15th. Download HypeHype and make your dream game.
What is happening, Hypesters? Welcome back to the HypeHype Live. I'm your host, Shogun. Today we are in the editor. I've got a few demos planned for you guys. And then, of course, I will leave some time to open it up for questions if anybody needs any help in the HypeHype editor. How's everybody doing today? I saw a lot of activity in the chat as we were gearing up to start. Welcome, everybody, to the stream. I think I have a few things planned here, so we're probably going to jump right into some demo action here, and then I'll give you a little bit of time for questions if you have any. So let's jump into the editor here. So right off the bat, we're going to talk a little bit about physics. Physics in HypeHype can do a lot of things. There are a number of tools that we have that work by simulating physics, right? So if we go into the logic here and just take a quick look, you know, we go into the action category. We have explosive force. We have force. Both of these are using physics. You know, the spawner itself doesn't necessarily use physics, but it can apply force to things as it's spawning them. Again, using physics there, right? This whole physics category we have underneath of that, all of these are using physics. And then, of course, in our objects, we have the physics type, dynamic object. This is an object that is simulating physics. The reason that I wanted to start with this quick little overview of physics is because we're going to talk a little bit about the physics materials, which is something that I think a lot of creators don't really think about. I know I personally never touch the physical materials until, of course, I'm in a situation where I need to. And you will come into situations where you need to use the physics and the physics materials. So just to give an example, I meant to start here in the platformer template. So, no, I don't want to do this tutorial. Why won't it? Stop. Quit tutorial. Yes, there we go. Okay. So, right, we got this guy. He runs around and he jumps. And the jump in this character is physics. I'm not sure. Let's take a look at the behavior here. He's probably moving with physics as well, but it's possible that we're using a mover there instead of a force. But no, here's our force that controls movement, right? So the movement of the guy is based on physics. The jumping is based on physics. And that is, of course, determined by the physical material, exactly how that operates. So here we have the player is the light material. If, for example, we change this to the heavy, we're going to see now our guy's a lot slower. Oh, he can't even jump. He's too heavy. We put that on bouncy. Bouncy is not quite so heavy. It's still heavier though, but now you see we bounce a little bit when we land. So that's a few things, just quick examples of things that the physical material can cover. So let's go into our physics here and actually take a look at these. So these are our materials. We have a number of preset ones. I believe this has a few extra ones because of the template. It has the player and the platform. I'm actually a little curious. We have a player material here, but according to this, our player is light. It's possible this does not override physics. Okay. So we're actually using the physics that's in... No, because this guy doesn't have physics. It is using that physics. Anyway. All right. Whoops. Let's continue here. So let's take a look at the physical materials and what we can actually edit in them. So we go to the physics tab at the bottom. And you can open this up, and there's a ton of stuff in here. There's a lot of options. It has been taken down a little bit. We used to have 3 tabs of options, but we've scaled that back a bit. I apologize if there's some noise. There's like some construction or something going on. What even is that? I hope you guys don't hear it. It's really loud to me, though. Anyway. So in here, we have a bunch of things that we can adjust with the physical materials. The density is, of course, how much the thing weighs based on how big it is, right? The denser it is, the heavier it is. So we can crank that up, make things really heavy. We can turn that down, make them really light, have it somewhere in the middle. And I would say if you look at a lot of the presets here, like if we go even to the heavy, it's only at like 4, and it's pretty heavy. So you can get stuff like super heavy. And that's, of course, going to affect how things can move. If you have something that you want to, maybe for whatever reason, it's going to have dynamic physics, it can move, but you don't want things to be able to easily move it, you make it really heavy, right? What's going on, Hypesy? Welcome to the stream. We don't hear. I hope... All right, Harvey's back with the question about the pre-made respawn system. We can take a look at that in just a moment. Let me finish looking at this this physical material stuff. Oh, you don't hear the extra sounds. Nice, thanks. Okay, so we have density is the weight of the thing. I think most of the time you're going to be pretty low numbers here. This was the heavy. It was set at like 4. Bounciness is, of course, how much it's going to bounce. Pretty straightforward. I think friction is an important one because friction is going to determine how much objects can slide and move off of each other. And that's going to definitely, with some tools, affect how they work. If you have items with high friction, they are going to not want to be able to slide on each other, right? So again, for example, let's go into our, physics. We're using the light there on the player. If we crank up our friction here, and we give a play test, like, well, he's still moving pretty good, isn't he? It's probably because the ground does not have strong, or it is because this is not, what if I'm going to check player, because it says it should be using light. I'm not sure what physical material this is using. I'm assuming it's using the one that's in the behavior, which went where? There it is. But I bet this one has, this is also using no, that's using default, but this one's using light. So which one is it actually using? Does this one override physics? No. But it must be using the physics properties of one of these, otherwise it would not have any physics, because this guy has no physics. Well, anyway, friction's going to determine how things can slide on each other. If you want to, for example, create ice, then you make your ground have really, really low friction. If you want to make something like, particularly like you have moving platforms, right? You don't want the guy to like slide off the moving platform as it moves. High friction. Okay, and I mean, whoops. Is there anything else we want to really look at in here? So on the right side here, we have a gravity multiplier at the bottom. You can change the effects of gravity for specific objects. I don't know what that was set at as default. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to save this. And then both of the slowing here, these are pretty important because in the real world, as objects, any object moves through space, there is resistance from like air, right? Air, we think of it as being nothing, but it is something. And the more of it is, the more it resists you. And so basically these slowings are kind of simulating that effect, right? So for example, if there's no slowing, when you're applying physics to something, when that physics is turned off, the object might keep moving a little bit, right? Because it doesn't it has some momentum and it doesn't have that slowing to slow it down. Yeah, I'm just going over physical materials there, Dorian, because I think a lot of people don't really touch them. And you can do some cool stuff with them. So it's important that people know what's going on with physical materials. I think that about covers it. I'm not going to go in. I don't even know what anisotropic friction is. And I don't think you really need to worry about that. If you're like doing something crazy physics and you're really smart about physics, you can probably do something with those settings. I can't. So yes, so there we go. That is the physical materials, and I do have a couple of nodes I want to look at, but Harvey was here last week asking for some help, and is clearly here again, still needing some help with the same issue. And I've already got this template opened, which has a pre-made player. This one functions a little bit differently, but than the 3D one, but they both use the exact same concept, right? So let's go look. First, we need the checkpoint, right? So if you're going to respawn, you need a place for the player to respawn. In this template, that's checkpoints. If we go here, let's move. This is our finish line. Let's go to the build menu. Let's add a checkpoint here. So we got a checkpoint there now, right? If we run, we jump, we trigger the checkpoint, we die, it sends us back to the checkpoint. So what happens there? Let's first take a look at the checkpoint. So in the checkpoint, we have this invisible white box. We can see it in the editor when we have logic view on, but as you could see when we play, it's not there, but it's still there, right? And what happens is this has a collision trigger in it, I believe. Yes, collision trigger there. It's looking for the green group. That is the group that the player character is in. And what it does is when it detects the player, it is hitting a compare. Okay. The compare is looking at something. What's the compare looking at? Compare value is coming from, whoops. I should have looked at this ahead of time. I anticipated we might be talking about this, and now I'm caught a little bit off guard because I don't know exactly what this thing is doing. But this compare is checking, I guess, if this has been triggered before. So we have 0 and 1. If it's true, no, it stays 0. If it's false, it goes to 1. Uh, do. Broadcaster. Aha. Okay. So it's checking if this has been. It is checking if it's been triggered before. It's just doing it the opposite way I was expecting it to do it. Um, and then this sends to. One problem we have with these is we've changed the way the logic is visualized, and now these are kind of laid out poorly because a lot of these lines go in the wrong direction. So I'm just going to move this around a little bit so we can see it a little more clearly. So that executes, and then let's go look at our player controls here, I believe is where that's going to be. Or is it? Oh, it's in the health. My bad. It's in the health. So we have checkpoint here, right? When the checkpoint is triggered, it triggers this value inspector. So this is what's happening. This is the broadcaster that's coming off of the checkpoint. When we hit the checkpoint, it executes this broadcaster. When that broadcaster is executed in the health pre-made, it takes a look at the position of where the player is, and it records that position into this vector. And then this adds a little bit of distance to the Y just to guarantee that the guy's not going to spawn in the ground. And then that goes to a mover. So what happens here is when the player runs out of health or dies from falling into the pit, we have one of these. Is it maybe this one? Which one is the health? Health. This is our health value. And that goes to both of these compares. Yeah, okay. So this is the compare that's checking whether or not the player is still alive. It's getting from damage player. Yeah, this is feeding into those. So essentially what happens here is when this one detects that the player has died, either by running out of health or by falling into a pit, it executes this little piece of logic here, which basically it locks the game. It turns the player invisible. It plays this sound. There's a short delay here, and then it executes this mover, which is using the saved vector as the position to move the player to. So that is how the checkpoint works, or the respawning works in the player pre-made. So essentially, if you have a pre-made player and you have the pre-made checkpoint, they should be working. So after all that long-winded explanation, did that explain anything, Harvey? Have I helped you? Assets, we go to pre-mades, checkpoint. You're right, it's not in there. I will try and remember that because it's should be pretty easy to add. But in the meantime, you can go into any of these templates that do have it. You just click on the container there that's got the checkpoint. We're going to hit down at the bottom here, copy, and then we can go to whatever game we're working on and paste. Paste. Where did you put it? Oh, because I don't have logic view on. Still, where did you put it? Did that not work? Paste. That's interesting. That seems like a problem. Oh, they are. Oh, why? Interesting. Okay. Anyway, now I just put it in there like a bunch of times, which was foolish. But there it is. It did add. It just was not visible because it's a pre-made container. Actually, I should have realized that it's not going to be visible until you open it. Okay. So again, let's back out of here, get rid of all this stuff. We'll go back in here. Now, the first node that I wanted to look at is the, speaking of physics, we're going to look at the conveyor belt node. This is a newer node. And it's actually pretty easy to use. Let's use it. So I'm going to go models here. I just need a nice big long piece. This one will work. Just scale it up a little bit. All right, so now we have this long object, right? And we have our dynamic cube here. This, of course, has no physics. Let's give it some physics. All of these purple nodes that are in the physics category, generally the object that they are applied to or they are attempting to affect, that they are attached to in whatever way that they work, is going to need to have some sort of physics. If it has no physics, then the physics nodes can't work with it, right? So let's take this conveyor belt. We're going to push it at that object. We only have a few settings in here. We basically have the X, Y, and Z, and this is the direction that the conveyor belt moves. So in this case, our orange plank there is on the Z axis. So I'll just like add 1 to the Z. And if we play it, there we go. You can see it's just pushing the cube along the surface there until it falls. If we wanted to go the other direction, we make that negative, and it goes the other direction. We could add X and Z, and now it's going to go at an angle until it falls off. You can see it's going a little bit faster there too because it's kind of getting force from 2 different directions. And at least in this case, whoops, I wanted to do equals 0. In this case, Y is not going to do much because if it tries to push it up, it then pushes it off the surface of the object where it is no longer getting force. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, the Y is just not going to do anything. I wonder if we like crank that up really high, will it try and like bounce it off? Nah, it's just, it can't even handle that Y. That's fine. But if for example your thing was on an angle, you're probably going to want some Y because maybe just the left to right force or the forward backward force isn't going to be enough to push it up that hill. So that's where you would kind of want to get the Y in there. I wonder actually, is this negative? Is negative going to push us up? I think usually with Y negative is down, but anyway, it's not enough for it anyway. And that is basically the conveyor belt. This, I think, is also just like kind of a force multiplier. Yeah, you can see it goes faster when that bottom value is higher. And that is the conveyor belt. And like, since we were talking about physics and we're in here, like, we could take a look at a couple of these other ones. Because, right, we have a lot of joints here. We have attachment joint, distance joint, hinge joint, point joint, spring joint, and wheel joint. And all of those will attach 2 objects together in some way. And they can be quite useful. For example, if you have... What is going on? It feels like this building's just gonna like collapse. It's like shaking. Anyway, um, say you have two objects and you want them to work as one. Maybe you have something that's like attached to your player character. And you want it to be glued to your character so that it moves with them and does whatever they do. But maybe at some point during the gameplay, you want that to be able to come off. And if it's glued, right, that's never going to happen. We can glue these two together, and those two are now essentially one object. But if we use the attachment joint, it's going to do the same thing. These two objects are now attached. If we play, they're going to move together. If we turn dynamic physics on the bottom one, they're going to move together. But if we want to, we can undo that. So I'll just grab a button here, and I'll say when we hit the button, we're going to disable this attachment. And now they're connected. I hit the button. They become disconnected. Super useful. We also have in here distance. Distance can be a nice one because it's not, it doesn't need to be anyway like super strong. So what the distance does is you attach the two objects to it, and it doesn't really care how those objects move in relation to each other as long as they keep the same distance apart, right? So if we grab, for example, this, let's put an object touch in here. Where am I? Object touch. And we'll do just a drag camera so that we can grab that guy and move it around, right? So you can see there, the green cube is moving, but as I move this around, it's moving to try and keep its distance with this. If I pick it up off the ground, you can see it's trying to come up there, but there are other forces at play here. So it's not going to just always stick as if it was the attachment joint. It's going to be able to move around. So that could be really handy if, for example, you have something, you have like an NPC or something that's like moving around an area. This could be used to just keep that NPC from like getting too far away. There's other ways you could do that. That might not be a great example, but you get the meaning. Like that's a newer tool as well, the distance joint. I think the rest of the joints here have been around for a while, but the hinge joint, that's like a basic door. The point joint will attach two objects at a single point, but they can still turn in whatever way they want to. The spring is, of course, a spring. The wheel is super handy if you're making a car because the wheel actually combines a couple different things. So you have the joint that allows the wheels to spin, but you also have a spring in there so that the car kind of has some shocks. Where's the? Have I showed something, or or was that in the chat? The water node. That's coming to the physics, right? That's not in yet, is it? Anyway. But yeah, as y'all pointed out, there will be a water body node that does not simulate water visually, but kind of will simulate as if the objects are in water. That will make them float. So probably going to be able to do some cool, interesting stuff with that. All right, and then there is one more node I wanted to take a little bit of a look at here today. It's another newer node. Let's get, well, I'm just going to delete this for now. We have our cube here. So let's take a look at the sphere cast, which is here in the actions. This is similar to the raycast, so if you've used the raycast before, I think you probably are going to get the gist of how this guy works. But we're going to attach it to a cube here. There's a few funky things, right? So the first one that we can see right away when we attach it is we do get a visualization of a sphere, but it's like way up here above our cube, and that is because we still have this max range, right? So if we want that sphere to spawn around the source, hold that thought. I can't even read that. The Amholiverse. I'm sorry. The thing is kind of long away. I can't read it. If you need help with something though, drop it in the chat. I might be able to do it right now. So if we change this max range to 0, then we can see our sphere has now moved around our cube. So I think probably the most common way people would want to use this is to detect things around an object. You know, say you have an enemy that you want to automatically detect your player. You could have a sphere cast that's looking for the player. You have a player that has maybe some sort of auto attacks, right? So the player is automatically kind of looking for enemies and automatically targeting them as you run around. You could do that with the sphere cast. So basically, the sphere cast is going to work very similar to the ray cast, kind of similar to a collision trigger. Essentially, once this sphere detects whatever object it's looking for. So right now, our group filter, it's actually looking for everything. But let's say we're making a player character and we want to detect enemies. Enemies are going to be red group, so we will be looking for red group. And then the next big one we're going to want to look at is radius, right? So you can see as I adjust this radius, that visualization gets bigger, gets smaller based on the values I make. And most likely what you're going to want is you're going to want that sphere to expand. So it'll start small, it'll get bigger, and then as it gets bigger, right, it's looking for anything. Okay. I'm gonna come back to you there with the conveyor belt question. I'm gonna finish this real quick. We're almost done here. So I'm gonna take in this sphere, I'm gonna grab a wave, and we're gonna use this to expand that sphere, right? So we looked at this, we could see 1.3 is not very big. 5 is getting pretty big. It depends on how high we want to go. Let's go to like 10. So we're going to start at 0. We're going to end at 10. Oops. That's going to be equal to 0. We'll do it relatively. We'll leave it at half a second for now. And then we're going to, whoops. We're going to, this is going to go to our radius. And actually, I don't think we need to execute. I probably could have kept that a reader link. Anyway, I'm not sure, actually. Let's see if it works. Let's grab another cube. I'm just going to set up a really simple test case. This cube we're going to change to the red group to pretend it's an enemy. And just for fun, let's make it red. We'll put it in the background a little bit too so we can see it. And then we want to know whether or not the sphere is detecting it. So to do that, I'm just going to add a particle effect here. The particle effect will be an explosion. And what we're going to do is when the sphere cast detects an object, it's going to send that object as the target to the explosion. This we actually do want to execute so that it also executes the particle. So you can see there it worked, right? If we go in here, we loop this. Doop, 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 doop. Boom. And it should be looping. Why did it not loop? Let's make it a little bit slower. No? Okay. Custom shaped, that would be good. I would like a cone, so you could do like a vision cone. Um, yeah, why is this not? That doesn't need to be on, does it? Why am I suddenly not getting this? It was working. There, it's working. Okay. Now it's yeah, okay, now it's repeating. So I think the issue is, and this I thought that this had been fixed, but I guess maybe it has not. Just want to. No, it does still work. I don't know why it wasn't working previously, but there we go. The one thing you'll notice though is that every frame that it is touching the cube, it's executing, right? So we could go in here. This does not have a disable after first like the collision trigger has, but we could go here and just say we're going to disable that once it detects the first thing, we'll disable it, and then when the loop is over, we'll re-enable it, and then we should just get one explosion each time. Yep, there we go. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so sphere cast. Now there's. Do I have my mouse here? Because I need to scroll back up to look at that question. Okay. So where were we here? Conveyor belt for fruit match. I'm adding this gimmick for my custom level. I need the fruits to move by one in its path on the board. All right, so I would honestly say if you want to move an object by a specific increment, I would personally use the mover, because the conveyor belt is using physics. Physics, by its nature, is a little random, right? So you might not always get the exact movement you're looking for. Whereas if we, if we grab a mover and we say, I'm just going to delete some stuff here, delete all this. We say we want to move this one unit to the right away. We'll say over 2 seconds again so we can see it happen. Boom. Oh, I made it go to the left because it's turned around. So to the right, negative. Boom, you get it to move the exact amount you want it to. Whereas if we took a cube, we get another cube, or just like a round square or whatever, and we apply the conveyor belt to that, and we say we want to move X1, we'll disable this guy, or at least, yeah, we'll just disable it for now. Oh, this thing doesn't have physics. There we go. That's what happens when you try and put a physics on a object that doesn't have physics. So, right, we're moving there, but you get a little extra motion at the end, right? So it's going to be a little more difficult to control exactly how your object is moving. Uh, Harvey asks, will there be an update where a player can interact with another player in the future, like hitting them? You can already do that. So if you want to make a multiplayer game, a true multiplayer game, and not like a ghost multiplayer game, which is what a lot of the games currently have, uh, it's a little more complicated to set up. In fact, I would, if I were you, go to the create page here, search multiplayer, go to templates, and there you got a multiplayer template. You can fire that up, and this will help you out because all the spawn system is already kind of set up, and that's the most difficult part to set up when you're creating a multiplayer game. But yeah, this is multiplayer. We can here like pretend we add more players. Each time we add a new player, I take control, but as you can see, I can push these guys around. I can jump over them. I can stand on their heads. This is true multiplayer, players physically in the same game space as opposed to each being in their own game world and being able to see each other. All right, now let's because I didn't realize. Let's go here. Here's our nodes, right? The multiplayer nodes. So if you want to build it yourself, you're going to need to use these nodes. There's the multiplayer spawner. You will also need, we can't see it here because you have to actually apply it to an object, but say this is our player. We could have the multiplayer control, which basically means that the controls for this object will be assigned to a player when that player joins the game, and only that player. Okay, so we do have now, I don't know if this is available for everybody. There's the notification node. I saw somebody talking about it in the chat there. That will allow you to do some notifications for your game to players of your game. I have not used it yet. I'm not going to delve into it right now. I would rather take a look at it first. See how it works, understand it, so that I can properly explain it to you, as opposed to blindly poking it live on the internet. So, do we need anybody else need some help? That was the extent of what I had prepared for today. Sorry again, I remember the name was difficult to read, but whoever had the conveyor belt question, did that help at all? You still have some questions? Want to make sure we get that well covered since it was one of the official topics for today. Would be good if everybody has a good grasp of the conveyor belt. Can you publish a place with checkpoint 1? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. in there? Yep. And I still have this guy in the... This checkpoint still in the clipboard there. So that's a handy thing. If you have something in one hype that you want to use in another hype, you can copy it there. Yeah, as Kevin's saying, I didn't really understand your question about the checkpoint there, Harvey. Scroll up here, see if I missed anything. Oh, that was just the platformer template. You can just go open up the platformer template, or the if you want to do 3D, the like parkour template has a checkpoint in it for 3D. Although honestly, I think the logic is exactly the same. So yeah, parkour template, platformer template. This one has its. I think that's it for now. But yeah, you can grab it from either of those. And honestly, after the stream's over here, I'm gonna see if I can just publish that checkpoint to the asset library, because I should be able to do that. Okay, question from PT. Remembering a question from Discord about making an NPC car that could drive along a track. So, of course, depending on how you want this to work, a lot of different ways that you could do this. I'm trying to remember what profile. Let's see if I can find it easily. Because we have a game where this is done. But it's quite old, so it might be difficult to find. Oh, it would be really nice if I could find this, because I don't think I have time to actually build that logic and properly show how it works. It probably helps if I spell race right? I actually wonder if I have a version of that in my drafts. I don't actually think that I do. All right. I'm just going to try and build it really quickly. Let's go. Yeah, the futuristic looking one. So I'm going to do a really quick and dirty version of this. At least I'm going to try to. So what we're going to use is not the easiest tool to work with, but here it is, the spline tool. Hyper Racer. All right, let's see if we can find that so that I don't have to try and build this. Hyper Racer. Yeah, okay, here we go. Let's just follow this back to the original. Okay, so we'll remix that. Turn on our logic here. So you can see each of these cars has a spline. The cars that you are not controlling, right? We're the yellow car. So, and each of these cars is, wow, the buttons and controls is not great. Something's gone wonky with this. It probably, because this is so old, the changing of the physics engine has affected this negatively. Because certainly something's not right with this hype right now. But you can see there all the cars run, and then the funny thing that happens is all the cars at the end veer off to the right there. So let's select one of these splines and we'll go into the edit spline mode. All right. And now we can see that there's a line, and we can actually also see this blue line that is traveling along this line, right? And that's essentially what the spline does, is you define the different points of the spline, you define how curvy the edges should be, it fills in the line between each point, and then it tracks movement across that line. And what the spline point outputs, or can output, or what you can output with it, let's back up here. Where are we? So this is sending the vector position of that point to some, what is this, like all hidden in here? Where is the logic for this? Ah, okay, the spline point is just not in the container. So that spline point is, oops, it's sending that to a mover. The position of that point as it moves along the line is going to this mover. That mover is moving this invisible object. This has to be done because things can't target that point directly. I think you probably could, but in this case, we're moving this thing, and then the car just has a look at. So the car is always facing this invisible ball as it moves down the track. And so the ball goes to the right, the car is going to turn to the right. The ball goes to the left, the car is going to turn to the left. Of course, it takes some balancing there, right? Because you need the speed of the ball. It can't be too fast, because if it gets too far ahead of the car won't be able to keep up, right? The thing might go left, but the car goes left. There's a wall there. So you need them to stay relatively close together. The speed needs to kind of match. Also, if the car gets ahead of the ball, it's going to just flip around to try and face the ball, and that's not going to be great either. So there's a little bit of balancing you have to do there to get the speed to match. And then once you do, it's good. Now, if you were going to make this a little more dynamic, like depending on what the path is that the car has to follow, how the gameplay works, you know, you might have other factors coming in there, you know, like cars bumping into each other, cars getting stuck on things. So you might need to add some other logic there that could, for example, adjust the speed of the spline points. Say if the car slows down, it knows that like, hey, we need to slow down the speed of the point that's moving along the spline point as well. And then yeah, the Alu has a point now too, in that we do have the Pathfinder. So one way you might be able to do this now is with the Pathfinder. I don't know how well it would work with a car. It would definitely be interesting to see, because essentially the Pathfinder works kind of similar to what the Spline does, but instead of you defining points, the Pathfinder looks at the environment and defines the points automatically for you of where the car needs to go, or wherever the object, whatever it is, needs to go to navigate around all of the objects in the game world. So theoretically, it would work, but I think it really depends on the shape, the configuration of the game world that you're working with. All right, and we are getting pretty close to the end here. If somebody's got a nice little shorty, we could do a quick little short one. But otherwise, I think we are going to call it a day. So while I'm waiting for that, I'll start waiting for any final questions. I'll start my little outro spiel. 100K competition is still ongoing. We have a little bit less than a month until the deadline. And when the deadline comes, we will, of course, be taking a look at the stats, seeing where everything fell, and then deciding on where to go next. If indeed nobody has hit the goals for the competition. So you definitely want to continue working on your games, continue trying to get those numbers up, and then keeping an ear out for what is going to happen next when the competition is over. I will be back here next week with Kevin. We will be playing games. I think next week we're going to mix it up a little bit, and instead of playing recommendations from the Discord, we're going to check out some of the games in Top Charts. So that should be interesting, checking out some of the top games in HypeHype for the month. That's going to be something that we start to do a little more regularly here on the channel. So I hope you guys will come and hang out for us with that. It should be a good time, checking out some really good games, getting some sweet, sweet game design advice from Kevin, and maybe some from myself as well. We'll see. Until then, I've been Shogun. This has been the HypeHype Live. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out, spending a little bit of your day with me. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe if you want to get some more of this awesome editor HypeHype knowledge that we try and share here on a regular basis. It's really our goal to make you guys all better at making games, because that's good for everybody, right? Good for players, good for you, good for us. Let's make some awesome games. That's going to do it for today. I hope you guys have an amazing Thursday, awesome Friday, and incredible weekend. Until next time, peace out, Hypesters.
We launched creator monetization 1.5 months ago. Let's check some of the best games you've made. You've created astonishing 20,500 games, and by you, we mean 3,765 creators worldwide. Also, your games are better than ever. Our data team shared that average playtime has already increased over 20% and retention almost 50%. Rock Tycoon Idol had the longest #1 streak on top charts. Easy Obby got the most likes, 12,311. And you earned already $30,000 via engagement-based payouts. And now you have the chance to earn more in the $100,000 competition that will run until September 15th. Download HypeHype and make your dream game.